Hello practicum students. In this video I hope to clarify how to calculate how many pages you need for your white paper if you are going the white paper direction. And also, what does a page look like in a white paper? What are the expectations of that content after you figure out how many pages you have to produce? So what does it look like? Now there is a lot of latitude I'm giving you in this assignment, and white papers allow you to do that. So it's not the format of APA, which again is very prescriptive. The white paper is going to allow you some creativity to really let your own personality shine and hopefully give you some fun in doing that. But with that being said, there are some general guidelines that we're looking for in these white papers. So I've picked a couple that might inspire you. There are hundreds out there, thousands of them out there on the internet. I would go out there and look at some that you like. You're going to like certain colors and layouts. You will notice themes, that there are some themes, like almost all of them have a table of contents. Busy business people want to know quickly where they can find that content on that page. So you probably want to do that with your white paper. So, but let's go ahead and let me show you the calculations for the number of pages required. If you remember, the formula is that one page of a white paper, which we'll go over some examples of what it kind of should look like, equals 4 hours of work. Okay, so let's take a look at the calculations with that. Now, before COVID-19, I think almost all of you had booked some hours. I think all of you had booked some hours. Some of you had actually booked quite a few hours before COVID-19. Those hours are not wasted. You have those log sheets before it all stopped. Save those log sheets, okay? Never get rid of them until the course is over. But you're going to use that final total in calculating how many more hours, or in other words, pages, you need to complete with your white paper. So in this example, we had a student just made up these numbers. They're not anybody's numbers. But if you had a student who had 12 hours of actual physical practicum before COVID-19, remember that we do need to do the 120 hours in practicum. That's kind of the, I guess, the benchmark that we have to meet before you graduate is at 120 hours. So 120 hours minus the 12 hours the student already did, obviously leaves you 108 hours remaining. 108 hours. So with that, we use our formula. One page is 4 hours of work, so you just divide 108 divided by 4, and that gives you a 27-page document, final product. Now you may be going, 27 pages, that's a lot, Chris. It is a lot. It is a lot. But remember, that's done over 108 hours. That's over 40 hours in a work week. That is 2.5 weeks of just, if someone were to work on this full time, you'd work on it Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week. I think when you put that perspective in there, that you're producing 27 pages in 108 hours is very, very doable. And honestly, it's probably going to take you maybe half of that to produce 27 pages. Again, I was generous in the 4 hours of work per page of content. And then when you see, we'll take a look at some pages of content. They're not as information dense in many cases. Some pages will be more information dense, but they're not necessarily as information dense as an APA research paper. So again, I think it's very, very doable for you. And quite frankly, again, it'll probably work out a little bit to your benefit. And especially as you go in, you'll with any process, you'll get faster in creating pages and getting your layout done and all that stuff. So again, I think the 4 hours to one page is pretty fair. If, as we go through this process, if you think it's not fair, if you're like saying, Chris, it's taking me a lot more time to produce a page, hey, let's talk about that. I'm not going to be closed-minded. Obviously, I had to come up with an equivalent. I write I write about 20 pages a week. So I kind of know in my mind, okay, if I get at such a speed, but all right, well, then let's double that speed, or let's double the time required to produce that content. So, I don't want my perspectives or basically my wild guess in this ratio could be totally off. So we'll talk about it if we need be, but I have a feeling I think we'll be okay with the 4 hours for every one page of content. All right, so let's take a look at what does a white paper look like. I went to my professional organization and grabbed, they got a whole bunch of them there, but I grabbed one. And let's just open this up a little bit. And let me bump that down, bring that over. Here we go. All right, guys. So this one is from the Healthcare Financial Management Association. Nice little association if you like healthcare finance. It's basically the Healthcare Finance Association. So they have a ton of white papers, and here's one white paper on healthcare reform. You can see it's a 40-page document. So this is going to have somewhat similar. This is even more. I mean, obviously more than any student would have to write. Let me put it this way. If you had 0 hours of practicum done, and some of you are just starting the semester, if you have 0 hours, you need to get 120 hours. You're doing the white paper, assuming you're doing the white paper. 120 divided by 4 is a 30-page document. So at worst, a student would be producing a 30-page document. Here's a 40-pager I just grabbed off the internet. So, but take a look. I mean, they've got just like the cool graphics in the front. They all have that kind of cool graphic. If you watch the videos in the white paper section of the course, the name that you give your white paper needs to be kind of catchy and have some sizzle to it. So be careful of that. You've got these filler pages in here, letter from the editor, measures of support, people who probably paid for this, contents. So you've got, they always have it seems that a lot of these white papers have this content area in here. I think it's great for the reader because that professional business person can jump right to the section that they need. So if I were you, I would consider a content page. But let's take a look at some of the actual stuff. Now, executive summary. There's an executive summary in here. The font, I'm not going to give you any limitations on font. I'm going to show you one in here in a moment. This font, they tend to use a pretty tiny font. So the pages tend to be a little bit more dense. I would probably bump that up a bit. It's a little harder to read, especially on the internet, if someone were to download your document. But you could have, a cool graphic in there. If the graphic is meaningful and you've produced the graphic, not just cut and paste, okay, guys? You can't just, borrow somebody else's graphic. You can be inspired by somebody else's graphic. Totally good with that. But you don't want to cut and paste somebody else's graphic in your white paper. But here's a nice little chart that they did in here of how the various domains of healthcare reform and of over time. So that was kind of neat. That's a page. That is definitely a page right there. That's a lot of information there. Then their section 1, you can have bullet points in there. You can have little introduction narratives. So this is again what a page would look like. Let's grab a couple other at random here. These are kind of neat. These little call outs in here, you can definitely have those. So I'm not saying that. Obviously, when you pull a little call out in here like this, it does draw the reader in. Everybody reads that first, but you don't want to overdo it because that you're just you don't want to do it just to fill in the page. In other words, if you got a zinger in there that you really want to highlight, that's what you want to do. Pop that in there. We'll do one more page. Oh, just a wonderful page full of charts and numbers. That's a little boring. But again, more graphics. Here's what you go. This one I would call very dense. Small font. They used a double column. there's a lot of information per page in this. This would be like the I wouldn't expect you ever to do anything more than what I'm seeing here. Okay, this is very, very again, a lot of dense information, small fonts, highly packed in a double column format. So let's take a look at another one. This one is a little bit more friendly, I guess, in some ways. Let me bring that down a little bit. So we got HIPAA compliance, 6 reality checks. That's kind of a cool little catchy phrase there. If you're really into HIPAA compliance and you want to make sure that you're okay. Nice little graphic, on the front. I doubt that if you're doing, looks like she's doing billing and coding, you're probably wearing a stethoscope. But again, you got your table of contents, a little bit different the way they've done it, but that's kind of cool too. So you got some creativity with that. Notice now here, I would say this is probably more along the lines of what you're going to do. A little bit larger, easy to read font. Look at this. So this is a page. I call this a page. You've got this reality check 1, whatever. Again, that's their, don't like, I know it's going to happen. I'm going to see a bunch of these guys. You're going to do like these reality checks. They're doing that. That's kind of their spin on this particular white paper, is to call it a reality check, which is again kind of cool. But I've done stuff like I've done the top 10, and you could do things like that, but only if that applies to what you're dealing with in the topic that you're addressing. But if here, this is what I'd call this would be a page. We've got a nice bold graphic occupying more than half of the page, and some nice readable font, not too packed in too tightly. You could create this in 4 hours. You could create, you could create the chassis of this, the basics probably you could create in 2 hours, and then spend another 30 minutes playing with color and font like I would do, to make it nice and pretty, and be done with it. So that would be a full page. This again, I would consider this is a full page. They have this margin on the side, but they use it very nicely. In kind of a creative way. So that's also something to do. And we'll just do one more. Oh, this one I liked. Yeah. So with this in this section 2, they use infographics in there. That's kind of neat. So that's fair game as well. So this right here, guys, I call this is kind of this is what one page of your white paper could look like. Okay, and very very doable. I think it's not, again, the first example was incredibly dense. I would never expect anything more than that, and this one I think is a little bit more reader friendly. It's got a little bit more sizzle. It's a little bit more easier to read. It's more exciting to read. I like the colors and the infographics and stuff like that. So hopefully that helps you. But what I would encourage you to do is, again, go on the internet, start playing around. You're going to find some that you really are drawn to, and you're going to like, yeah, I really I want to model that. Don't rip it off blatantly, but you definitely can model and be inspired by other other white papers. I'm a little hesitant in doing this, but I'm going to do this. So I did, in just trolling the internet, I actually, within about 45 seconds, I found hundreds of templates available for white papers. Most of them wanted you to buy it. Some were pretty reasonable, but I'm not asking you to buy it, but just know that they're out there. And if you see one that you've got to have for $9 because it's the perfect template for you, up to you. I'm not requiring that. I will include one of the freebie templates out there. You do probably want to sizzle it up and personalize it for you. remember that, but by no means let me just conclude that you're by no means are you required to use the template that I'm going to provide down below, okay, in the link below. Again, you could probably want to alter it to make it your own, but it's a good, a very good starting point. But again, I want you to remember the underlying purpose of the white paper. It's not to make you do, a bunch of busy work in a research paper. It's to give you an opportunity to identify something out in the real world in consultation with a mentor, okay, that you can personally use, okay, after you graduate for your own advancement and benefit. Now, obviously, white papers are going to have a limited life. You can't be circulating probably a 5 to 6-year-old white paper. But in the next, 24 months after graduation, you're interviewing. I think it's a great demonstration piece to someone that, look, I know how to approach a problem. I know how to solve it. I know how to communicate it. And I don't need to be spoon-fed an answer. I don't need, I'm a problem solver, and that's what people want to hire, especially, at the level that you want your careers to go by being in this program. It's evident that's where you want your careers to go. And those people hiring, they want problem solvers. They don't want, people who just are, that they do their jobs well, but they need to be told how to do their jobs. I think I find most executives like to find people, again, who can solve problems. And this would be a direct evidence piece that you could show that, look, I consulted with someone. We developed, this concept, this idea. I then went forward and presented these solutions or this approach or this insight into whatever this thing is that you find out there. And I produced a white paper, and here it is. Boom. So please approach it from that if you want to get the most value out of what you're doing for the, probably the 110 hours. Or in some cases, I know that a couple students are only starting the semester for the 120 hours that you potentially could be putting into this project. So keep that perspective. This is to be something selfish in a way, not just to be done and turned in and forgotten about. It's something for you to take away with and hopefully continue to use, for your own advancement. So there you go, guys. Hopefully this helps a little bit in understanding the requirements and kind of the general expectations for the white paper. But again, allow you some latitude in shaping those expectations as well. Thanks.